Hi everyone, it's Casey, and today I'm going to be bringing you 5 reading lessons focused on studying characters in literature. I'll be bringing 5 different unique reading lessons that you can use with your students in class. So, the first one is focusing in on the main character's problems. I think traditionally we think about the 4 different types of conflict: person versus person, person versus self, person versus society, person versus nature. We teach those 4 different types of conflict and we ask students to identify the 4 different types that are going on in the book. This lesson brings with a tiny different lens. So you're looking specifically at the main character and the problems that that main character is having. And you're having students identify what problems the main character is having. And then you're asking them, how should the main character solve this potential problem? So, like from a logical outsider perspective, how should the main character solve this problem? But knowing what you know about the main character and the main character's character flaws that they may possess, what how do you think that character is actually going to solve the problem? And it brings up a good discussion, and it also shows you what the students understand about the character and how that character is going to approach different situations. So that's a little bit of a different spin on main characters' problems. Here's an anchor chart that could go with that lesson as well. So as you can see, it's divided into 4 quadrants, and there are questions that students can ask to help them identify the different types of conflicts the main character is facing. So, for example, with person versus self, what are some decisions that the character is struggling with? Where's where are places that the main character is deciding between what's right and what's wrong? What do they dislike about themselves? What are something that they have to do to overcome their past? The next lesson I have is to consider different characters' perspectives. So, this lesson would focus in on looking at the narrator. So, usually that's that main character, and looking at how that main character described a plot event. What perspective did that main character bring into describing the plot event and how it takes place? Now, take what the main character described and take a step back and think about another character who was also involved in that scene. If that character were to describe that same plot event, what perspective would that character bring to the plot event? So, for instance, any Hunger Games fans out there, take that initial scene in the Hunger Games where Katniss's sister, is chosen as tribute to participate in the Hunger Games. What would that scene look like from Prim's point of view, or Katniss and Prim's mother's point of view, or Peeta's point of view? And if you rewrote it or thought about what details that character would bring to the scene, what different perspectives would a different character offer? The next lesson I have about characters is to track character dialogue. So, this lesson would work really great for something like interactive read aloud or literature circles. So, what I would have students do is you would be reading a chapter aloud, or perhaps they'd be reading a chapter aloud in their literature circle groups, and say that there were 4 different characters that said something in dialogue across the chapter. I would number students off by 4 and assign each student a character. And obviously, there's going to be overlap. There's going to be multiple students who focus in on the same character. So, as I'm reading that chapter aloud, I would have students making noticings about what that character is saying aloud in dialogue. After the chapter is over, I'd have students get together with the other students who focused in on that same character. And then I would do a jigsaw and I would partner groups up so that every group has one person that focuses on each character, and then they could share out that way as well. Some different questions that you could have students focus on when they're looking at the dialogue would be questions like, what tone did the character use as they were speaking? Who did the character speak to? What was the purpose of what the character said? What character trait would you use to describe the character based on what that character said? So, those are just a few suggestions of different things that students can notice as they're looking at the dialogue that is said. Another lesson is to have students look at common character types. So, a lot of common character types originated from myths, biblical stories, fairy tales, and these same common character types show up in books. And to teach students that so that they are able to identify these character types again and again, regardless of the book they read, is kind of a cool and interesting skill. So, some of those common character types that we recognize in books are the underdog hero, the wise man or woman, the character who's like the ultimate evil, the love interest, the confidant that the main character confides everything in, and then the foil character who directly clashes with the main character and shows the main character's traits because of how different that character is to the main character. So those are a couple of those common characters that show up. And I think this is a neat way to teach students how to recognize those character types that authors incorporate in, regardless of the plot. The last idea for a lesson that I have is an interactive character anchor chart. Once again, this is going to work great for an interactive read aloud, a whole class novel, something that a book that all students in your class are sharing together. So this would be something that I would prepare before reading. Take the main character of the book, write their name on the top of the anchor chart, and then divide that anchor chart into different categories. So for instance, like the top, I have favorite quotes. So that would be places where students could identify favorite quotes that the main character says through dialogue and or thinks in their head and puts those quotes up on the anchor chart. The next categories there are likes and dislikes. So what does the main character like? What does the main character dislike? And then the very last, I call it good moves and bad moves. It could be like good decisions, bad decisions. So, what are the places where the main character is making good decisions, and where are places that the main character kind of has some flaws and probably makes the wrong choice, which ultimately leads to the conflict of the story? So, this is a fun way to track the main character across the book because, after all, books are always generated around that main character. So, teaching students to focus in on that main character is a great way to increase their comprehension in a book. So, those are the 5 lessons that I have for you today. I want to also let you know that if you visit my TPT store, bit.ly/KC TPT, spelled KASEY, and click on the grab and go reading lessons on the left in the categories. I've got a lot of different grab and go reading lessons. Some of 3 of the ones that I've mentioned today in the video are actually there, all prepared with materials, formative assessments, presentations for students. And those are meant for you to be able to grab and use in your classroom. They're meant to be an easy resource for you to use for reading lessons that are a bit out of the norm. So I hope that you'll go over there and check those out. And I hope that some of these lessons that I shared today sparked an idea for you to try with students as you focus on teaching them about characters in their books. Until next time, thank you very much and have a great day.